Growing up, what were the movie monsters that scared you? What did you imagine was lurking beneath the bed and looming behind the closet door? Frightening and thrilling images encountered in childhood have fueled the imaginations of filmmakers to conjure new nightmares for the next generation. Following their hugely successful masters of makeup effects, Oscar-winning makeup effects artist Howard Berger and veteran film journalist Marshall Julius emerged from the shadows to continue their Hollywood monsters odyssey with the book Making Monsters, an oral history of the monsters who made us and the magicians who made them. Welcome to Classic Movie Club. I'm your host, Chad Knirk, the digital editor of Film Review. We've been celebrating cinema here at Film Review since 1944. And while we celebrate 80 years, we're turning our lens to another celebration. Making Monsters archives candid recollections with more than 80 visionaries. In a spellbinding, devilishly detailed compendium of never-before-seen photographs, Making Monsters pries open the crypt to expose the twisted geniuses that dreamed the nightmares, the hands that stitched the beasts, and the blood-bound monster kid community determined to keep the flame alive. Hollywood's most iconic creatures come to life as Berger and Julius forge craft with camaraderie, inviting readers onto the set and behind the scenes. What I love about these books is that they're chock full of stories. They're so instantly rereadable. As soon as I finished Making Monsters, I could go back to the beginning and read this again and find new things that maybe I didn't hit me the first time.
And it's not that it's like a linear story.
Yes.
I mean, you can go same with Masters of Makeup Effects. And it is an oral history of film and the focus of what we like to do and what the books are about. But it's really nice. A lot of film historians that have read the book and contacted us and said, this is a great history of what you guys do. It's really, there's no other one like it. I mean, there's books about individuals, like Mike Westmore wrote a book and Rick Baker wrote a book, but this was something that, we wanted to do. And really it's about connecting with our friends and people that are our heroes and that we admire, and it's getting to spend 2 hours with them, asking them questions and just kind of having casual conversation, which is really fun. And that's how it all came about.
Did you settle on that format, the way that the book is laid out?
Yeah, Marshall and I were basically, our fingers are all over every single page. And what we would do is, we knew what we wanted. And this goes back to, it's a very similar format as Masters of Makeup Effects. And Marshall and I knew we wanted something that reminded us of our childhood when we had our monster books that we still have. And it's about photos. And yes, there's text and there's things, but it's about the photos, and it's also a kind of set up for people that have reading and learning disabilities, because I have dyslexia, severe dyslexia, and I always found it difficult to read. But, Marshall and I came up with a font and a layout, and we really like it. And it's really hit a nerve with people, because I think everybody that's creative has some sort of disability, some sort of learning disability and reading disability, it seems, everybody in my industry does. Absolutely. It was important for us to have a really interesting and engaging format. And Marshall and I would hop on FaceTime almost every morning, like at 3 and 4 in the morning, my time, which of course Marshall's in the UK, so it's 8 hours ahead.
Which was still early enough for me.
Yeah, it was still early for him, very early for me. And we would go through the pages that the publisher and editor sent us and rework it all. We just cut and paste and move it all over the place and go, no, this is why. Because we understood what photos go with what text and where the text has to lay. I mean, if you don't know it, it's difficult. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just that we know better than anyone. And we knew how we wanted this book to come together. And our fingers are super deep into every single page. But this one especially, and they gave us design credit, which is nice too, because Marshall and I were feverishly designing every single page ourselves.
Yeah, it did feel like, I mean, we did that with the first one, but with the second one, it was like, it would be nice. It's not like it comes with any extra paycheck, but it would be nice if at least we got also designed by credit, because we really, I mean, there are whole pages and spreads in there that we did. I mean, we did so much, and there's our photography in there and our stories. And I mean, it's really also very personal. and it's really personal for all the people that we interviewed as well. So it feels like a family album, which is why
Yeah.
when we do these big signings, it feels like sort of like a class reunion. You know, everybody's fan of everybody else. It's very inclusive.
No, absolutely, Marshall. And we made sure every contributor got a free book. So they've all gotten their books now for the most part.
But I think for a lot of the people involved, it's sort of like a legacy thing.
Yeah.
I think people wanted to be a part of it and to be included. And they've got great stories. You know, Howard always says that one of his favorite things about going to set is hanging out with his friends and just sharing stories and having fun. And that's what we wanted to capture in the books. You know, it was really important that we cut out all the dry stuff, all the stuff that, you know, you're going to read and forget. We only wanted to include the best stuff that you would remember. Like if you went for a dinner party with these people, you know, the next day you're not going to remember necessarily all the small talk, but you're going to remember like those 3 or 4 blockbuster stories that they tell that you can then try out yourself. That should be what the book is, because how many, we interviewed 80 people. We spoke to everybody for about 2 hours. So that's, you got 160 hours of transcription there, and that is more than, and that's enough for 10 books. So we could afford to be really selective. I mean, like really harsh. And if something didn't cut the mustard, it's like, sorry, that's not going in, you know. Plus, a lot of people like the same films, so it's like we had to be really selective. It's like after a while, we're like, okay, so what is your favorite monster movie that isn't The Thing? Or you know, American Werewolf in London, or what's your favorite makeup that isn't Frankenstein's monster? You know, it's like, because it's like you can't all say the same thing, otherwise it's literally going to be a book about 4 films. But we got there, and we've got some fantastic stories, and the things that people attach themselves to as kids, the things that scare them or they get obsessed with. When you go back far enough, then you get real variety.
Now, looking back, having finished volume 2, what has this journey been like? What have been some of the more rewarding or inspiring moments for each of you?
Well, for me, I mean, the first book, Masters of Makeup Effects, Marshall had been chasing me for almost 20 years to write a book together. And when the pandemic hit, he said, "You have no excuses because you're sitting at home." And I went, "You're right." So we kind of brainstormed and formulated and then, you know, started writing. I mean, and it was a great opportunity for everyone. Again, we had 67 people that participated in Masters, and everybody was stuck home. Nobody was going, so it was perfect.
It was relatively easy to do the first one because people weren't only free, they were bored out of their minds and desperate to talk.
Like absolutely.
We almost couldn't do it fast enough, really, with the first one.
Yeah. And then for this book was the strike, the actor strike happened.
Oh, yeah.
And so my show got shut down, and Marshall said, "Hey, I have an idea while you're not working, because you can't work." And then we said, "Well, let's do this. This will be cool." And it was nice also because Wellback, who published the book for us the first time, they reached out to us and said, "Masters was so successful that we want you guys to do another book, but we don't want a second like Masters of Makeup Effects," because, you know, they wanted something different. So Marshall and I pitched them another idea, and they really liked it. And, you know, we got 80 participants, and really it's, you know, the first book's really about makeup effects, and this one is just about movies and monsters and you know, how it affected us as kids and how it inspires us today. And you know, we were able to really throw a very, very broad net, you know, in terms of having actors and composers and directors and you know, VFX people, and it was really an incredible experience. And for Marshall and I, who are complete total cinephiles and fans of everything cinema, it was thrilling for us because we got to hear stories and talk, you know, hear from the horse's mouth. You know, like you're talking to Charles Bernstein, who composed the music for Nightmare on Elm Street and other movies, and he's saying, "Oh, I'll share you the sheet music, and you can put that into the book, the original handwritten sheet music," and talked about Wes Craven and things like that. We were just really fortunate. And I mean, I'm lucky I have a lot of friends in the industry, and I now owe them big time because I've asked them numerous times to do so many things, which they're very great about, very, very generous about. But it's so rewarding. It was just fun to talk. And like Marshall said, as we have these book signings, that's a great opportunity, because so many times we're all on the road. And this is a great opportunity for all of us to be in one room and be together. And it's so much fun. It's so much fun.
As a writer, I'm sort of mostly at home sitting in my pajamas in front of my computer writing. So it's like, it's pretty solitary, and I'm not a solitary person. After we did the first one, I had a chance to come and do the signings. That was just like the best time ever. I just had so much fun being around everybody and actually getting to, hang out with them in person instead of, over Zoom. And also to be sitting in on these signings with all these incredible legends. And I'm not outside with my nose pressed up against the glass looking at how great that looks inside. I'm like sitting at the table with them, because obviously Howard and I were both huge fans of all this stuff, but we come from different sides of it. Howard is a filmmaker and a creator, and I'm a fan and a journalist, and but so we have slightly different perspectives, an insider and an outsider perspective, but we both love the same things. And I think between us, we kind of got a good round picture of everything, and we were able to sort of fill in the blanks for each other, really.
Yeah, I love all of the personal photos, future professionals playing dress up, making monsters. Mm-hmm. It really helps draw those parallels to the imagination and creativity that's so essential to that role.
Yeah, and we wanted people to read the books and to be inspired, to get a sense like, well, the world is smaller now. Now you can connect with like-minded people more easily because of, with the internet and all. When Howard was growing up, and all of his, all of his friends, all the other creature kids, all the monster kids, they were spread out all over the world, and they were usually the weirdest kid in their neighborhood. So it was like, and they spent most of their times in their bedroom making masks and doing all of that. So it was sort of solitary as well until they, expanded their worlds. They went to LA, they got into films, they realized that they created this huge community of these monster kids. And that's why I think they're so tight, because they grew up without each other. Mm-hmm. And now, they kind of found each other. And it's, it's really nice to see. It's really nice to see people finding their people, their tribe,
I kind of liken it to like in Close Encounters, where they're all imprinted with like they have to go to Devil's Tower, Wyoming.
Yes.
Same exact thing. People from all over the world. Like, it's incredible. Like, first time I met Richard Taylor, who owns Weta and did the Lord of the Rings films, I was the very first makeup artist that did makeup effects that Richard ever met. And we worked on Xena and Hercules in New Zealand together. Like, he would do a block and then I would do a block. And he had never met anybody else. And had no contact with anybody else, just because New Zealand. And that then spawned this great relationship that I've had with Richard for 25 years. You build a community, and it's crazy. Meeting Peter Jackson, who was just a guy who had just made Heavenly Creatures, and just wrapped, and going to his house and looking at all his toys and what a fan he was, but he wasn't the Peter Jackson yet. Yeah, everybody kind of gravitated, in the 80s, anybody in the United States gravitated to Los Angeles because that's where it was. That's where the makeup effect shops were. Stan Winston, Rick Baker, Greg Canham, that's where you went. And, you just stay friends with these people. And I've stayed friends. And that's the other thing too, with these books, it's maintaining my relationship with everyone, that I've had for almost 40 years. So many people I've known forever. We all started out as kids. We all started out when we were 17 and 18 years old, working for Stan Winston or Rick Baker. And here we are in our 60s, and we're still doing it, which is incredible. And we're still all great friends, and I think that's part of the fun of it all. I had a great time interviewing people, and there were people I was nervous about, just because I'm such a fan still, I'm always nervous about Rick Baker, and I've known Rick since I was 12 years old. But even I just break out in a little bit of a sweat because I'm just such an awe of Rick Baker.
Howard is different when we interview Rick Baker as he is with anybody else. There's just something about Rick. It's sort of like meeting Oz.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's a religious experience for me. Mm. It's literally like, if I even meet up with Rick for lunch, I'm like so nervous before. Like, I don't want to look like an idiot. I don't want Rick to go but he's not that guy. I mean, he's such a great guy, but I'm just so in awe of Rick Baker, but I think that's good. I think that's what drives the fandom. It's like, I'm still so excited about things. Like after we finished writing and everybody started sending their photos in for the book, I mean, Marshall and I were ping ponging back. I'm like, look at this photo. Look at this photo. This is I've never seen this. Joe Dante sends us a bunch of stuff from The Howling, on set. Or Jason Reitman gives us photos of him and his dad, Ivan Reitman, on the set of Ghostbusters. And incredible. Or Phil Tippett with Ray Harryhausen when he was 17 years old. It was so incredible. And again, everyone was so generous and so kind and really on board. There wasn't anybody who said no. It's like, John Carpenter's wife, I reached out to his wife, Sandy Carpenter, Sandy King Carpenter, and she said, when I got the email request, I just looked at John. I said, hey, Howard Berger wants to interview. And he said, 100% yes. And John doesn't do that. Like, John's like, I'm good. I don't have any. He was so on board, and he gave such a great interview. He was so funny, so much so. Marshall, what's your phone ring now?
Oh, well, my phone ring. Well, because this new book, it's not just about makeup effects. We were able to just go much deeper into monster movies. So it's like, whereas the first one was very much from the experience of putting on makeup or having makeup put on you. With the new one, it's all about making monster movies and making monsters. So it's not just makeup effects. It's also digital effects. It's also, how do you write a good score for a monster movie? How do you direct a monster movie? Write a monster movie? It's when we tried to look at all the different disciplines and how do you play a monster? There was so much more to talk about, and that was what particularly interested us. So when we were talking to John Carpenter, what I really wanted to talk to him about was writing the Halloween theme. It's so iconic. It's like that da 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 da. That's like Close Encounters. Those few bars, or the Jaws theme. It's just one of those things. It just immediately puts you in. So we're talking to John about writing it, and he's like, oh, it's easy. If you grow up, it's bars. He's very self-deprecating, but it's like, it's John Carpenter, for God's sake. So maybe from his point of view, it's not a big deal, but to those of us who grew up on it, it's sort of like God tier creation, And so he started. So he was talking about it, and then he just did a few bars. He went da 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 da, and it was like, I can't believe John Carpenter just hummed the theme of Halloween for us. So I kind of figured out how to put it on my phone, and now it's my ringtone. And every time I get a message, and it always makes my wife jump like out of her seat, because it's very loud as well. But it's like, how could I not do that? It's like if I had, John Williams going, da, 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 da,
Right.
it's like, of course I have to. We didn't interview John Carpenter for the first one because, he's not, he calls it rubbery monster shit, doesn't he? The kind of makeup effects, he's more into, he appreciates it. He knows it's a necessary thing, and he loves the guys who make it, but it's not his number one passion. He's more into Dean Cundy's cinematography and different things and how it all comes together. But interviewing him for this book, where we could talk about all sorts of different things with him, he was just totally up for it. And it's great that he got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, because why didn't he get it 20 years ago? Why didn't he get it 30 years ago? It's like, what else did he have to prove? I think that Howard and I both really respond to enthusiasm, and people who are really passionate, because when they're passionate, then they're just all in. It's like, what can I do to make this happen? Or, how do you express your love for something? How do you create something that people will love? I think it's all about enthusiasm, and that's one of the main reasons why I think these books are so successful, because makeup artists and that level, that kind of filmmaker, they don't ever grow up. They never lose their enthusiasm. They never lose their excitement. Still talk, I talk to Howard about new movies and things we watch. Don't like everything, but we kind of want to see it. And we're excited when we see something that we really like. And it's like, that never goes away. So these guys, they started off as fans, and they never got to the point when they're like poo-pooed fandom. They were always, they still get it. And so that's why I think that the fans, horror fans and makeup effects fans, really have a very much closer relationship with the creators than perhaps some other disciplines in filmmaking, where perhaps Some people have had to make a bit of distance from their fans, in order because it's like they have such different experiences. But whether you're a fan or a filmmaker in the world of horror, you all just you just dig it so much. It's like you're just super into it, and so we get a lot of enthusiasm. We got a lot of it coming towards us for our book, for the people contributing to it, and we're getting that same sort of vibe from the people who are now excited to buy it. And it's, I think, without enthusiasm, without passion, and kind of loving these things, it's like, what's the point?
The sense of community and of a tribe and all the enthusiasm behind it comes through. And also some of these influences, right, that have trickled down and inspired multiple generations. You mentioned Harryhausen and Marshall. I know that you had a firsthand encounter. Is there anything that you haven't told about kind of that initial meeting with Ray and that experience?
We were very excited to be able to include Ray Harryhausen in the last book. We could mention him as a sort of as a source of inspiration for people, but we couldn't really get into it because stop motion animation, it's hard to shoehorn that into a book about makeup effects.
Yeah.
But when it came to making monsters, we actually gave him his own chapter. Ray Harryhausen is the only person who gets his own chapter, and I don't think anybody would say, "Hey, how come Ray Harryhausen got his own chapter?" It's like, because it's Ray Harryhausen. When I found out, I was 18. I just started writing, and a Forbidden Planet store was opening. A Forbidden Planet, he was doing some, he was doing some marketing with them. I'm not sure if he had one of his film fancy scrapbooks out, or if they just, slipped him a few hundred quid. I don't know what the circumstances were that he was involved in that, but the fact is that they said, would you like to interview Ray Harryhausen? It's like, obviously, would it be a phone? And it's like, well, no, actually, he lives in London. It's like, what? I had no idea. It's like, I would have spent the last 15 years stalking him if I knew that he was in this country.
Yeah.
So that was, going to interview him, that just kind of blew my mind. If I ever had any doubts, which I didn't, about what I wanted to do for a living, the afternoon I spent with him, he was so generous with his time, and he was so, and I was so excited. And I think he liked it. I think he liked meeting his fans. I think he found it kind of comforting because he could see that the world was moving on from stop motion. And maybe he thought that he would be sort of just this sort of twee little footnote in film history. But every time he met his fans, and they said, no, these films were important to us then, and they will always be important. They will always mean something. I interviewed him a couple of times. The second time I interviewed him, I just finished the interview, and he excused himself to go and do something. And I'm standing in his living room, and there's two other journalists that just arrived, and they're sitting there. And I looked over, and there was Ray Harryhausen's Oscar. And it was just there on the mantelpiece. And I looked at the door, I looked at the guys, I looked at the Oscar, and I thought it would be so naff if I said to Ray Harryhausen, "Can I hold your Oscar, please? I've never held an Oscar. I'm just really, And so I admit, if you want to know something I've not told anyone before, I did pick up his Oscar, and the two journalists there, I gave a little acceptance speech for winning an Oscar, and they looked at me like I was so naughty, like I was like, they just couldn't believe it. And I quickly, got my teacher and just sort of polished it and put it back. So that's pretty shocking, but I didn't damage it, and I didn't put it in my bag.
In your bag.
Yeah. Honestly, there was so much stuff in his house. It's insane. He had, every model that he's made, he had storyboards, and he had scripts of everything. It was such an incredible wonderland. It's just the most, I still think about it, once you do an interview like that, you can't, how could that possibly be beaten? Except maybe interviewing Howard the first time we met, and he made me up like Mr. Tumnus. That was also pretty good.
Yeah.
That was a good. And I got to hold Howard's Oscar that day. Maybe it's kind of meeting someone, manhandling their Oscar. That's
it.
That's
gotta
the
be
secret. A lifelong obsession, maybe.
Howard, on your side, I know you had some correspondence when you were young. What's Howard's book of knowledge contain?
My book of knowledge, yeah. Well, I started writing people early on, and especially, I was able to hunt down Rick Baker and Stan Winston, but I knew that Dick Smith lived in Larchmont, New York. So I started writing him, and he would write back, and I would ask questions, and he would send me formulas and notes, and I saved them all. I have a giant book, Howard's Book of Knowledge, and it's filled with notes and letters from Dick and other people too. There's some Chris Wallace stuff in there from Gremlins, and some, Mike Westmore stuff, but the Dick Smith stuff is really important to me because I still use it. I still refer to those notes, and like the blood formula that Dick created in the 70s, I still use, and we use it in my studio at K&B Effects Group, and it's the base of all the blood that we make, and it's the best blood. And but yeah, no, it's everything. And I look at it all the time, and it brings me back to like being a kid. And, all the Dick Smith letters have his letterhead, Dick Smith, makeup artist. And on the side is like his address, his home address. And he was always open to talking. You just couldn't call him during dinner. There were real specific times. And if you did, he'd get really pissed. I never did that, but I have friends who got chewed out, by Dick Smith because they called at the wrong time. But Dick was the guy who's like, you call him, he's like, I'm very busy right now. I really can't talk. And then like 4 hours later, he's like, I've got to go now. So he enjoyed it. What Marshall was saying about Ray Harryhausen, that, Ray saw the end of his career coming, and there were people like Phil Tippett that were advancing what he had, he planted the seed, which was a magnificent seed, and it grew into multiple trees. But then there were people like Phil who then took it farther, and so on. And Dick was that way too. And Dick would always say, all of you have surpassed me. You've all surpassed me. We never believed that. And we would always go, that's not true by any means. But he's like, no, I look at what you guys are doing today, because we were entering a whole new world of like prosthetic work, like using silicones, things, stuff Dick never ever used. He was so fascinated by technology and watching it grow, and really it meant a lot to him, and he would really, I think he, towards the end of his life, I saw him 6 months before he passed away, and we went to lunch, and, he got very emotional about it because it was a table full of us that wanted to take him to lunch, and we did it often. He just would say, it's amazing, that I look around and there's thousands. I'm like, there's hundreds of thousands of people that do this because of you. It's really a matter of keeping Dick's knowledge alive, which is about sharing and education, which is super important, and keeping his memory alive, which I think we're doing a really good job at. And I feel like the Academy Museum in Los Angeles has done a great job as well. They know how important Dick Smith was to the film industry. And it's really wonderful to see that continue. And everybody, we need everybody to keep remembering there's Dick Smith, and there's Ray Harryhausen, and there's Rick Baker, and all these amazing filmmakers. Everybody we spoke to all had the same hits. Their greatest hits were, like Marshall said, like they all love The Thing, they all love American Werewolf, they all love Dick Smith, J.J. Abrams wanted to be a makeup effects guy, and he signed up. Dick Smith had this course, the Dick Smith makeup course, and J.J. submitted for it when he was younger, and Dick didn't think he had it, and he said, you know what, you shouldn't do this, but you should be a filmmaker. And then J.J. Abrams became a filmmaker and not a makeup effects guy, And I think also when we're talking about like-minded people, it could be anybody. It's almost like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. You meet somebody and they turn out to be a massive fanatic. So like Marshall was talking about Ray Harryhausen's Oscar, I was working with Tom Hanks, and I said, well, what's one of the greatest things that you ever did? And he said, I got to present Ray Harryhausen with his honorary Academy Award. And he said, I'm a huge Jason and the Argonauts fan. Like, I love Ray Harryhausen. He said, that was my most thrilling moment, was to get to meet Ray Harryhausen. And again, you wouldn't think that, but there's all these people in the industry that love this, love monsters. They're obsessed. I mean, we interviewed Simon Pegg, who, is a huge monster fanatic and movie fanatic. And that was really great. I mean, he'll talk about anything, and he's such a fan as well. These are all fans. That's also what binds us. We're all professionals. You talk to Joe Dante, he's been at this since editing for Roger Corman in the 60s, late 60s and the 70s. And the guy is still a massive fan. Like, he loves movies. He goes and sees everything. Him and John Landis are movie buddies. And so they go and see all the stuff all the time, go to the movie theaters and go watch movies. So it's cool that, aside from, this is what we do for a living, in everyone's personal life, they're still crazy about film and about monsters. And it's really great. It's a fantastic community, all very kind and all very like-minded. And that's kind of what brought these books together. And that's what makes these books really, really fun. we were able to get some great memories. We didn't, Marshall and I crafted a lot of, we crafted all the questions, but we also tailored everything to individuals, and when Jason Reitman got his book, he called me immediately. He's like, that photo you put of me and my dad really made me emotional. I really appreciate that. Like, I love the fact that my father's in your book with me, and we've gotten a lot of response from people who really feel well represented, which that was a big thing. And part of our process was, once we interviewed and Marshall wrote everything up, we sent everything to each person, their quotes, to make sure everything was good. Some people rewrote, John Landis, and then some people are like, no, it's good to go. Sometimes, like with Phil Tippett, Marshall and I are like, I think he's going to cut all this stuff because it's a little inflammatory. And then Phil's like, nope, print it all. So
yeah, I was surprised. It's like, but the best thing about interviewing, especially the older guys, is that they just don't give a shit. You know, I mean, it's very positive, the book. We wanted to,
it's not a slag off.
Stay positive. But yeah, there are a few things. Usually, I think that the craziest stories that you think you're surprised that they told us, it's like they're the crazy one in it. It's like it's their mad behavior. And yeah, I can't believe that you would, you tell us that story. And so we write it up and I'm like, do you think? And Howard's like, yeah, write it, send it. Like, what's the worst that can happen? And then we send it and it was like, they didn't tell us not to use it. It's like, I'm surprised. In terms of due diligence, if you send everybody their stuff, you give everybody the chance, then there's no, down the line, oh, I wish you hadn't said that, or I wish I was. People felt free to talk to us because they knew that they'd have a chance to, tinker with it afterward.
Yeah, it was really important. Again, about representation, and it's not a book about slagging somebody off or anything like that. That doesn't exist, and that's not what our interest is at all.
What's a deep cut monster movie that you'd recommend?
Well, one of the first films that really inspired me as a little kid, was The Thing with Rosie Greer and I just watched it again, and it's actually really good. I mean, it's cheesy 70s crap. Yeah. It's got a two-headed Rick Baker gorilla in it, played by Rick Baker, and that really blew me away. I'd never seen a gorilla suit like that before. And my dad had shown me the film, and I was like, wow. And I was really, really young. And I think that film still works really well because it's about a lot of different things. It's a very racially charged movie, and there's a lot of everything in it, but there's some cool makeup effects stuff, and how they got Rainbow. I don't even know how they talked Rainbow Land into like perching himself behind Rosie Greer, who is a big giant guy with his head right here, for most of it, and it's just awesome. So that's a pretty deep cut monster movie for me, and it really, really sparked my interest in it, and that's where I first heard about Rick Baker. Was that because I had read like Famous Monsters of Filmland that Forey Ackerman, edited. And I was like, Rick Baker, who's this Rick Baker guy? I mean, he's incredible,
That's good.
Yeah.
I would say for me, it's all bug movies. I liked, there was this TV movie called The Ants of Lakeside Manor. I don't even know what it was called. And that was a crazy film. And there's people just being pulled over with ants. I love spider movies, from Arachnophobia to Kingdom of the Spiders with William Shatner. It's like, what I like about those bug movies is that there were very few special effects were involved. They just put tons of bugs all over the actors. And like, wanted to be in a bug movie. Yeah. This is what it means to be in a bug movie. And I know in Arachnophobia, they were like competing to do who could do the most disgusting things, and that some of the actors had spiders in their mouths, and there was no CG. There was just like an actual live spider. And, I respect that. So I love, I love a good bug movie. And Night of the Lepus.
If you could go back in time to any production and witness it being created, witness a monster being made, what would it be?
For me, it would be going back in time to the set of Creature from the Black Lagoon. And being there and being able to go to Bud Westmore's shop at Universal Studios and seeing, all those guys building that creature suit and really get an idea of like, wow, that's cool. And meeting young Rico Browning, because I got to meet Rico when he was older. It would be Creature from the Black Lagoon.
I think for me, it would be King Kong. The original King Kong. I just love that film. It's so full of mystery and adventure, and I think it would be really fun to hang out on the set and to just see see that come together, and to learn from the man who inspired Ray Harryhausen. I mean, that would be pretty cool. But also, I suppose, really, if I could go back in time, but then come back, I would go to Star Wars and just fill my pockets with stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, the lightsaber just went for almost 3 million quid. So
Right.
I think I would probably just go there and I would just say, "Oh, you're finished with this, George," and just.
Yeah, you don't want this lightsaber. It's junk.
No. Well, we now had stories about how they just threw a lot of that stuff out at the end of, filmmaking. They didn't know what to do with it. So, Christopher Tucker told us. Christopher passed away after the first book, but we've included a story that we had spare for the new one. And he worked on the cantina scene. And at the end of that, he just threw everything out in a skip outside. I still have nightmares about that. Oh my God. He said he just couldn't. He said if they had any idea of the value, he would have obviously filled his car up with the stuff instead. But then he said he couldn't imagine that anyone outside of a mental asylum would actually give a shit. But that was why Christopher was such an awesome guy, because he was so incredibly rude to everybody, but in the most thrilling, hilarious way. No, we were very, very fond of him, and I mean, he's right. Loving Star Wars is a sort of madness, but I'm fine with that. I don't want to be sane.
Making Monsters and the Masters of Makeup Effects are available now from Welbeck. Check out Monster merch and learn more about the books and upcoming signing events at makingmonsters.org. That's our show. We hope you enjoyed the journey. If you like what we do, please consider becoming a member of Classic Movie Club. Your support helps us produce a new episode each month and continue the legacy of film review. Don't forget to subscribe, like, review, and share the podcast with all your film friends. My thanks again to authors Howard Berger and Marshall Julius. You can find all the details about Making Monsters in our show notes. We invite you back next month for another adventure, but until then, here's looking at you, kid.